Here are 3 harsh truths I had to understand when I was younger before I could build my self-confidence. And the faster you understand these, the faster you can start building your self-confidence. Harsh truth number 1, self-love is overrated. Now I know this one's probably going to be very controversial, but let me explain. The reason we want self-love is because we want to feel better about ourselves, but in my experience, self-love has a point of diminishing returns. In other words, you need a little bit of self-love to start feeling better, but then there comes a point where too much self-love actually ends up leaving you worse. So when I say self-love is overrated, I mean self-love is overrated at least in excess. And the reason I say it's overrated is because there's so much talk about self-love and self-care and that kind of stuff, and there's not enough talk, in my opinion, about the flip side of self-love, which is self-accountability. Our realities are not just internal, but they're also external. Speaking well to ourselves internally and taking good care of ourselves is important and even necessary, but that alone will not carry the day. A massage, for example, or a mani-pedi is not going to carry the day, and it's not going to make you a self-confident person. Telling yourself that you deserve to be a confident person alone is not going to make you a confident person. All of that is internal, and all of that stuff is great, but you also need the external. You need the proof that allows you to actually feel truly, genuinely that you can confide in yourself, that you can trust yourself. That is self-confidence, the ability to trust yourself. And a big part of how you do this is through the external world, because our brains are always looking at the actions and the behaviors that we are taking in the external world to determine what kind of programs and what kind of beliefs we should be running in our internal worlds. And so, for example, if you say you're going to do things, if you say you're going to work out, if you say you're going to meal prep, if you say you're going to do things and you don't do them, that erodes your self-confidence. And no matter how much self-care and self-love and affirmations and positive things you tell yourself, if you are not doing the things that you say you are going to do, if you are not following through on the things that you say you are going to do, you will not be able to build self-confidence. Another way to put this is that if all you do is self-love and self-care and positive affirmations and positive self-talk, but you take no action and you develop no sense of purpose whatsoever, all that talk is just going to leave you feeling empty. And so that is why you have a point of diminishing returns, because all that stuff is great, but when you do that stuff too much, there's no room for anything else, and then you just end up feeling empty because you're taking no action, and without action, you can't build your self-confidence. This brings me into harsh truth number 2, which is that building self-confidence is always hard. Like I was mentioning previously, self-confidence is just another word for self-trust, and the way that you build self-confidence or self-trust is by doing the things that you say you are going to do. Take, for example, a friend that's always telling you that they're going to show up to your events, but then they never do, and they always stand you up. You don't trust that person to show up. No matter how much that person tells you that they're going to show up, you're not going to trust that person to show up. The same thing happens with us. If we tell ourselves we are going to show up and we don't show up, we do not trust ourselves. And if we do not trust ourselves, we do not have self-trust, aka self-confidence. Conversely, if we do show up for ourselves, we end up trusting ourselves, which means we end up building our self-trust, aka our self-confidence. Now, this isn't easy. When we say we want to work out, when we say we want to meal prep, when we say we want to start a business, when we say we want to dedicate our time for an entire year at least to producing content and seeing where it goes, when we say we're going to do these things and we don't follow through on them, that kind of behavior erodes our self-confidence. And the thing is that following through on these things is very, very hard. You're not going to feel like doing it all the time. You're going to have your inner demons battling you every step of the way. But if you can fight through and actually do the things, that is how you build your self-confidence. That is how you build a personality that communicates a certain level of confidence. And as much as you can make it easier on yourself over time, in other words, by building your discipline muscle, you make it easier to exercise your discipline muscle, and by battling your inner demons, you gain power over your inner demons. As much as it can become easier to be the kind of person that is on a day-to-day basis building self-confidence, it will never be easy, at least not for a very long period of time. You might have days where everything feels effortless, but most of the time things are just going to be hard. And if you can overcome that and actually do the things, then you will build self-confidence. But if you expect it to be easy, then you will be very depressed when you find out that it's actually really hard, and then you won't do the things, and then you won't build self-confidence. So it's important to understand that this is actually hard, and so when it actually ends up being hard, which it will, then you're not surprised and you can actually push through. You will 100% have ups and downs, and you will 100% have them forever. That's why we must always be training our emotional self-discipline if we want to be self-confident people. Now, this concept of self-confidence equaling self-trust is not necessarily new. Nathaniel Branden, who has written many books on the concept of self-esteem, has a quote that I love that goes, "Self-esteem is the reputation that we acquire with ourselves." That's another way to say everything that I've been saying for the past 5 minutes or so. If this kind of topic interests you, I highly recommend that you read Nathaniel Branden's books. They have 100% changed my life and the way I look at myself and the way I look at self-esteem and self-confidence. And finally, harsh truth number 3, self-confidence is not all about the self. As much as I've talked about how it's not just positive self-talk and your actions matter and you have to always be vigilant to make sure you are taking the right actions and engaging in the proper behaviors that can build self-discipline. It's not just the actions and the behaviors and the thoughts that matter. The final piece of this is your environment. Humans are very much like plants. If you put them in the wrong soil, they will not grow and flourish. If we as humans find ourselves in a very disempowering environment where we're constantly being beat down by others, or we're constantly having other people who are supposed to be our friends or our family or whatever, sharing and injecting negative thoughts into us, then it's going to be very hard for us to build self-confident beliefs. As much as we want to believe that we can grit things out on our own, humans don't exist in isolation. And so your environment is either going to help you or it's going to hurt you. Now there's cases where people who were in environments that were hurting them and disempowering them have used that as kind of a chip on their shoulder to do the things that they say they want to do. But in my experience, the people that have done that have usually been in very extreme environments. If you're in an environment where it's just sort of negative talk and it's a little bit sly and sly remarks here and there, that kind of environment, it will disempower you, but it's not so extreme that you can get super pissed off and just use that as a kind of chip on your shoulder. Now, if you feel like you are in that environment right now and it is a little bit extreme and you can use it as a chip on your shoulder, by all means go ahead. But most of the time when we find ourselves in environments that disempower us, at least the audience that is watching this video right now, most of the time those environments are not that extreme and it's just negative enough to disempower you and keep you from building self-confidence, but not so negative that you take it and get really pissed off and use it as a chip on your shoulder. It's just negative enough that it disempowers you, but not so negative that you kind of want to do something about it, if that makes sense. It's almost like you know it's negative, but it's not so negative that you end up doing something about it. And so you just kind of get stuck almost like sleeping your way through life. And so if you can realize what is happening and you can realize that your environment is in fact negative, once you wake up to that realization, you can do something about it. You can use it or you can move yourself into a different environment. My personal preference is to move yourself into a different environment, an empowering environment, because using a disempowering environment as fuel will result in you leading a very pissed off and angry and tense life, which is fine if that's what you have to do right now. But if you can remove yourself from that negative environment and place yourself in a positive, more empowering environment, I 100% recommend that way more. If you take anything from this video, please take away that humans do not exist in isolation. I've said this before in my previous videos, but I believe that one of the best ways to change human behavior is to take that human and place them in a different environment. In my opinion, the 3 keys to any form of human change is number 1, beliefs, number 2, actions, and number 3, environment. If you get those 3 right, you can absolutely build yourself into a self-confident individual. Now, if you like this video, I think you'll also like this video right here called How I Learned to Say No Without Feeling Guilty. And as always, if you like this kind of content, make sure you join the community, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment letting me know what you liked and what you want to see more of. And if you want more resources, you can check out my website at the link below, where you can download your free copy of the 4-step morning routine to high performance and peace of mind. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video.